poppin', Omar? How you doing, brother? Good to see you in here. I am gonna try to do multi-streaming on here. It's been taking me a long time. Get so confused with the screens and all this other stuff, but you cannot do a studio mode on this type of streaming. So it's gonna be you guys gonna be seeing a lot of my windows coming, popping in and popping out. I already have a hard time trying to keep them away from you guys' view, but we're gonna give it a shot. Let's see what happens here. Omar, did you got the hat on? I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you liked it. Today we're gonna Happy Mask. How are you, Pamela? How are you? I wish that I can do the type the chat in here. Um, won't let me do it. Let me see if I can maybe sign in here. Okay, I can do that. Copy that. All right. So I guess I can go in this page right here. Liberty for all. What's up, my people? He says, we're doing good. I'm going to be going old school, and we are going to listen to a little bit of campaign debating. I don't know if you guys want to keep me company for that, but we're going to start with Trump and Hillary. And the reason why I'm doing that is because people that come into our chat, they keep saying thanks to us that, you know, what President Trump is said he was going to do, he's not doing, and well, he ran a campaign doing promising this and that, and we're going to take a listen to his debating, and let's see if he promised something that he's not doing, and if he's not doing it, we should hold him accountable for it. So we'll try to be fair. Do you know that some of us don't get an alert when you're on live? I have 10,700 subscribers now, and I am surprised that they don't get a notification. Now, one of the problems is that YouTube, they're pushing short views more than actual videos, and I think something is wrong with that. Something's got to be wrong in the algorithm to what people are not getting the notifications because I noticed that even I sometimes don't get it on my email, and I have a phone that I try here, I do for testing, and it doesn't seem to work. So yeah, it happens. A lot of people. Trinity tells me also that she sometimes she doesn't get the notifications. Yesterday she was not with us because she wasn't feeling well, but today we should be fine. Let me see. Are you guys watching on the landscape screen or the vertical screen? Because I got a lot more comments here. It looks like on my short stream. Yeah, I don't like that. Welcome everybody. Welcome. I probably won't be able to reply to all you guys' comments tonight. It looks. Let me see. Maybe I can show the chat on both. Let me see if I can open that window. Yeah. Hey, John. Welcome everybody. All right. Welcome everybody to the vertical and the landscape stream. we are going to listen to President Donald Trump going off against Hillary Clinton, and I think it's going to be a fun one to remember. Let me take a look here. So I got that. Don't need that. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look here. This is the debate from President Trump and Hillary Clinton. I hope you guys enjoy this old school. For those of you who were hoping that Hillary Clinton would win, well, we know the outcome. And there were some promises, some arguments made in there that I think are very important that we take a look at and see what has happened since. Happy Mac can't type. Yeah, Craig. We're gonna go old school here, and then we're also gonna review it and see what both of these characters actually said this night, and we'll talk about it as well. I do have other information to give you guys out, but I want to start off by watching this debate here really quick. Let me remind this real quick. Here we go. And if we can get audio in.
Clinton, you're calling for a tax increase in the wealthiest Americans. I'd like you to further defend that. And Mr. Trump, you're calling for tax cuts for the wealthy. I'd like you to defend that. And this next 2-minute answer goes to you, Mr. Trump.
Well, I'm really calling for major jobs because the wealthy.
Mr. Trump, give me 1 second. I want to be clear. I am all for cutting taxes to big corporations. I know some people don't like to hear that. A lot of people, socialists especially, like to complain about the rich don't pay enough taxes. Well, President Trump already started off by saying the right thing. And this is the reason why I agree with him. And this is exactly the way that he thinks is the way that I think. And this is why I voted for, well, I didn't vote for him this time. I was not a citizen yet. But this is why I supported him. And this is why I voted for him the second time around and the third time around. So if you guys come in here and visit, I don't know if you patriots agree with, giving tax cuts to the rich. I will point out two things. One of them is that by giving tax cuts to rich, yes, more jobs are provided. Companies are still growing and multiplying, and more jobs will be created. And second, nobody cares about the poor people. Everything is about middle class and rich. I want somebody to actually care about poor people. They don't seem to be important enough for any politician to talk about them for some reason.
Calling for a tax increase in the wealthiest Americans. I'd like you to further defend that. And Mr. Trump, you're calling for tax cuts for the wealthy. I'd like you to defend that. And this next 2-minute answer goes to you, Mr. Trump.
Well, I'm really calling for major jobs because the wealthy are going to create tremendous jobs. They're going to expand their companies. They're going to do a tremendous job. I'm getting rid of the carried interest provision. And if you really look, it's not a tax. It's really not a great thing for the wealthy. It's a great thing for the middle class. It's a great thing for companies to expand. And when these people are going to put billions and billions of dollars into companies, and when they're going to bring $2.5 trillion back from overseas, where they can't bring the money back because politicians like Secretary Clinton won't allow them to bring the money back because the taxes are so onerous and the bureaucratic red tape. So what is so bad? So what they're doing is they're leaving our country, and they're, believe it or not, leaving because taxes are too high and because some of them have lots of money outside of our country, and instead of bringing it back and putting the money to work because they can't work out a deal to, and everybody agrees it should be brought back, instead of that, they're leaving our country to get their money because they can't bring their money back into our country because of bureaucratic red tape, because they can't get together, because we have a president that can't sit them around a table and get them to approve something. And here's the thing. Republicans and Democrats agree that this should be done. $2.5 trillion. I happen to think it's double that. It's probably $5 trillion that we can't bring into our country, Lester. And with a little leadership, you'd get it in here very quickly, and it could be put to use on the inner cities and lots of other things, and it would be beautiful. But we have no leadership. And honestly, that starts with Secretary Clinton.
All right, you have 2 minutes on the same question to defend tax increases on the wealthiest Americans, Secretary Clinton.
I have a feeling that by the end of this evening, I'm going to be blamed for everything that's ever happened.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah, why not? You know, just join the debate by saying more crazy things. Now, let me say
there's nothing crazy about not letting our companies bring their money back into their country.
This is Secretary Clinton's 2 minutes, please.
Yeah, but we can always pause it because this has already been played. I agree with that, and I think a lot of the patriots will agree with me on that. We want that money to come back into our country. I really don't understand why Democrats, you know, this is 9 years ago, and they are talking about they don't care about bringing money into our country. They say it's not possible. They can't do it. President Trump has been running on this, has had a dream to become a president. He became a president, obviously. But the whole idea that they don't want money coming back to our country, why is that?
Yeah, well, let's start the clock again, Lester. We've looked at your tax proposals. I don't see changes in the corporate tax rates or the kinds of proposals you're referring to that would cause the repatriation, bringing back of money that's stranded overseas. I happen to support that. I happen to support that in a way that will actually work to our benefit. But when I look at what you have proposed, you have what is called now the Trump loophole, because it would so advantage you and the business you do. You've proposed an approach that has a $4 billion tax benefit for your family. And when you look at what you are proposing, it is, as I said, trumped up trickle down. Trickle down did not work. It got us into the mess we were in 2008 and 9. Slashing taxes on the wealthy hasn't worked. And a lot of really smart, wealthy people know that. And they are saying, hey, we need to do more to make the contributions we should be making to rebuild the middle class. I don't think top-down works in America. I think building the middle class, investing in the middle class, making college debt-free so more young people can get their education, helping people refinance their debt from college at a lower rate. Those are the kinds of things that will really boost the economy. Broad-based, inclusive growth is what we need in America, not more advantages for people at the very top.
Mr. Trump,
typical politician, all talk, no action, sounds good, doesn't work, never going to happen. Our country is suffering because people like Secretary Clinton have made such bad decisions in terms of our jobs and in terms of what's going on. Now, look, we have the worst revival of an economy since the Great Depression. And believe me, we're in a bubble right now. And the only thing that looks good is the stock market. But if you raise interest rates even a little bit, that's going to come crashing down. We are in a big, fat, ugly bubble. And we better be awfully careful. And we have a Fed that's doing political things. This Janet Yellen of the Fed. The Fed is doing political by keeping the interest rates at this level. And believe me, the day Obama goes off and he leaves and he goes out to the golf course for the rest of his life to play golf, when they raise interest rates, you're going to see some very bad things happen because the Fed is not doing their job. The Fed is being more political than Secretary Clinton.
Mr. Trump, we're talking about the burden that Americans have to pay, yet you have not released your tax returns. And the reason nominees have released their returns for decades is that voters will know if their potential president owes money to, who he owes it to, and any business
release the taxes.
Conflicts. Don't Americans have a right to know if there are any conflicts of interest?
I don't mind releasing. I'm under a routine audit, and it'll be released. And as soon as the audit's finished, it'll be released. But you will learn more about Donald Trump by going down to the federal elections, where I filed a 104-page, essentially financial statement of sorts, the forms that they have. It shows income. In fact, the income, I just looked today, the income is filed at $694 million for this past year. $694 million. If you would have told me I was going to make that 15 or 20 years ago, I would have been very surprised. But that's the kind of thinking that our country needs. When we have a country that's doing so badly, that's being ripped off by every single country in the world, it's the kind of thinking that our country needs, because everybody, Lester, we have a trade deficit with all of the countries that we do business with of almost $800 billion a year. You know what that is? That means who's negotiating these trade deals? We have people that are political hacks negotiating our trade deals.
The IRS has an audit of your taxes. You're perfectly free to release your taxes during an audit. And so the question, does the public's right to know outweigh your personal?
Well, I told you, I will release them as soon as the audit. Look, I've been under audit almost for 15 years. I know a lot of wealthy people that have never been audited. I said, you get audited? I get audited almost every year. And in a way, I should be complaining. I'm not even complaining. I don't mind it. It's almost become a way of life. I get audited by the IRS, but other people don't. I will say this. We have a situation in this country that has to be taken care of. I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes.
Do you remember during the Obama era how many people had foreclosure houses and how many banks had to get a bailout? The banks got bailed out, but the citizens lost their houses. How the hell does that work? Why wasn't the money given to the people? I will never understand that part of economies. I guess until I'm there, I won't understand it. Robert, I see you. Welcome everybody to the chat. We're just going old school here so that we can recap what was said, what has happened, and what it is and what will be.
When she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted, as soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns. And that's against my lawyers. They say, don't do it. I will tell you this. No, in fact, watching shows, reading the papers, almost every lawyer says, you don't release your returns until the audit's complete. When the audit's complete, I'll do it. But I would go against them if she releases her email.
So it's negotiable?
It's not negotiable. No, let her release the email. Why did she delete 33,000?
Well, I'll let her ask that, but let me just admonish the audience one more time. There was an agreement. We did ask you to be silent, so it would be helpful for us. Secretary Clinton.
I want you to hear what Secretary Clinton's response was to this. And she thinks her response was great and that fixes everything. Check this out. You guys remember this.
Well, I think you've just seen another example of bait and switch here. For 40 years, everyone running for president has released their tax returns. You can go and see nearly, I think, 39, 40 years of our tax returns, but everyone has done it. We know the IRS has made clear there is no prohibition on releasing it when you're under audit. So you've got to ask yourself, why won't he release his tax returns? And I think there may be a couple of reasons. First, maybe he's not as rich as he says he is. Second, maybe he's not as charitable as he claims to be. Third, we don't know all of his business dealings, but we have been told through investigative reporting that he owes about $650 million to Wall Street and foreign banks. Or maybe he doesn't want the American people, all of you watching tonight, to know that he's paid nothing in federal taxes, because the only years that anybody's ever seen were a couple of years when he had to turn them over to state authorities when he was trying to get a casino license, and they showed he didn't pay any federal income tax. So if he's paid zero, that means zero for troops, zero for vets, zero for schools or health. And I think probably he's not all that enthusiastic about having the rest of our country see what the real reasons are, because it must be something really important, even terrible, that he's trying to hide. And the financial disclosure statement, they don't give you the tax rate. They don't give you all the details that tax returns would. And it just seems to me that this is something that the American people deserve to see. And I have no reason to believe that he's ever going to release his tax returns, because there's something he's hiding.
So she thinks there's something that he's hiding. You remember Obama's birth certificate? Why was that so wrong to ask about? right? Remember that?
And we'll guess. We'll keep guessing at what it might be that he's hiding. But I think the question is, were he ever to get near the White House, what would be those conflicts? Who does he owe money to? Well, he owes you the answers to that, and he should provide them.
He also raised the issue of your emails. Do you want to respond to that?
I do. You know, I made a mistake using a private email.
That's for sure.
And if I had to do it over again, I would obviously do it differently. But I'm not going to make any excuses. It was a mistake, and I take responsibility for that.
Now, she takes responsibility for it. Why is she not in jail? That is taking responsibility for it. Just saying, oh, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Well, you can't bring those emails back. We don't know what kind of treasonous things you said in those emails. That's not taking responsibility for it. That's one of the things that pissed me off about her response.
Mr. Trump?
That was more than a mistake. That was done purposely. Okay, that was not a mistake. That was done purposely. When you have your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth, so they're not prosecuted. When you have the man that set up the illegal server taking the Fifth, I think it's disgraceful. And believe me, this country thinks it's disgraceful. It really thinks it's disgraceful also. As far as my tax returns, you don't learn that much from tax returns, that I can tell you. You learn a lot from financial disclosure. And you should go down and take a look at that. The other thing, I'm extremely underleveraged. The report that said 650, which, by the way, a lot of friends of mine that know my business said, boy, that's really not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money relative to what I had. The buildings that were in question, they said in the same report, which was actually, it wasn't even a bad story, to be honest with you, but the buildings are worth $3.9 billion. And the 650 isn't even on that. But it's not 650. It's much less than that. But I could give you a list of banks. I would, if that would help you, I would give you a list of banks. These are very fine institutions, very fine banks. I could do that very quickly. I am very underleveraged. I have a great company. I have a tremendous income. And the reason I say that is not in a braggadocious way. It's because it's about time that this country had somebody running it that has an idea about money. When we have $20 trillion in debt and our country's a mess, you know, it's one thing to have $20 trillion in debt and our roads are good and our bridges are good and everything's in great shape. Our airports are like from a third world country. You land at LaGuardia, you land at Kennedy, you land at LAX, you land at Newark, and you come in from Dubai and Qatar and you see these incredible, you come in from China.
9 years ago, he was talking about this. 9 years ago.
You see these incredible airports, and you land, we've become a third world country. So the worst of all things has happened. We owe $20 trillion, and we're a mess. We haven't even started. And we've spent $6 trillion in the Middle East, according to a report that I just saw, whether it's 6 or 5, but it looks like it's 6. $6 trillion in the Middle East. We could.
Yeah, that's $26 trillion total, and then nobody knows where that money went.
We have rebuilt our country twice, and it's really a shame. And it's politicians like Secretary Clinton that have caused this problem. Our country has tremendous problems. We're a debtor nation. We're a serious debtor nation, and we have a country that needs new roads, new tunnels, new bridges, new airports, new schools, new hospitals.
People don't understand this. What he just said, we can build our country twice over. People don't understand how much money that is. And if you don't know why China has been able to create the highest tech and all this other gigantic, enormous infrastructure that they can afford to get destroyed, is because they took all of our money with them on unfair trade deals and just stealing money from us. You guys worried about his taxes back then. There was all kinds of tax breaks that they can get. That kind of stuff, these ladies right here could have changed, but she didn't want to change it because it benefits her and her friends.
And we don't have the money because it's been squandered on so many of your ideas.
Let you respond,
maybe
and we'll move to our
because
next.
you haven't paid any federal income tax for a lot of years. And the other thing I think is important.
It would be squandered too, believe me.
If your main claim to be president of the United States is your business, then I think we should talk about that. You know, your campaign manager said that you built a lot of businesses on the backs of little guys. And indeed, I have met a lot of the people who were stiffed by you and your businesses, Donald. I've met dishwashers, painters, architects, glass installers, marble installers, drapery installers, like my dad was, who you refused to pay when they finished the work that you asked them to do. We have an architect in the audience who designed one of your clubhouses at one of your golf courses. It's a beautiful facility. It immediately was put to use, and you wouldn't pay what the man needed to be paid, what he was charging you.
Maybe he didn't do a good job, and I was
Well,
unsatisfied with his work, which our country should do too.
The thousands of people that you have stiffed over the course of your business not deserve some kind of apology from someone who has taken their labor, taken the goods that they produced, and then refused to pay them? I can only say that I'm certainly relieved that my late father never did business with you.
You know what I'm relieved of? That President Trump doesn't desert our troops anywhere. Let's not forget what she did over there in Benghazi. She didn't care about American lives. She acts on this campaign like she gave a damn about American lives. Show your taxes. You didn't pay workers. If they don't do a good job, they get paid what they're supposed to get paid, but they won't get paid any extra money. Let's be clear about that. For these politicians to be snakes like this when they're running a campaign, it makes me sick. To say that she's over here concerned about people getting paid because she's such an American and she cares about them. She didn't care about those soldiers in Benghazi, did she? She didn't care about this Russia collusion hoax that she was building up against them. She didn't care about telling the American people the truth. She didn't care about those 33,000 emails that she did not delete by mistake. She was honestly deleting those emails on purpose. See, we can't forget all this stuff that they've been lying to us about. That's why when we have all these crazy people come into our chats, they can't lie to me. They can call me all this stuff, but I don't believe it because I know what I've seen with my own eyes. I've been alive through all this time. 9/11, I was at work watching it on live TV while I was working for Comcast, and we were saying, never forget this attack. We knew who did it. We knew the people that celebrated, and look what New York did with all the youth, 18 to 29 years old, voting for a communist, Muslim, Marxist, and that's who they decide to go with. These people are so sick, they take advantage of the people that have mental problems and they run with it because they're just animals to them, just like our precious veteran soldiers were to her in Benghazi.
He provided a good middle-class life for us, but the people he worked for, he expected the bargain to be kept on both sides. And when we talk about your business, you've taken business bankruptcy 6 times. There are a lot of great business people that have never taken bankruptcy once. You call yourself the king of debt. You talk about leverage. You even at one time suggested that you would try to negotiate down the national debt of the United States. Well, sometimes there's not a direct transfer of skills from business to government, but sometimes what happened in business would be really bad for government.
Let's let Mr.
And
Trump
we need to be very clear about that.
Look, it's all words. It's all sound bites. I built an unbelievable company, some of the greatest assets anywhere in the world, real estate assets anywhere in the world, beyond the United States, in Europe, lots of different places. It's an unbelievable company. But on occasion, 4 times, we used certain laws that are there. And when Secretary Clinton talks about people that didn't get paid, first of all, they did get paid a lot, but taking advantage of the laws of the nation. Now, if you want to change the laws, you've been there a long time, change the laws. But I take advantage of the laws of the nation because I'm running a company. My obligation right now is to do well for myself, my family, my employees, for my companies. And that's what I do. But what she doesn't say is the tens of thousands of people that are unbelievably happy and that love me. I'll give you an example.
True.
We're just opening up on Pennsylvania Avenue, right next to the White House. So if I don't get there one way, I'm going to get to Pennsylvania Avenue another. But we're opening the old post office. Under budget, ahead of schedule, saved tremendous money. I'm a year ahead of schedule. And that's what this country should be doing. We build roads and they cost 2 and 3 and 4 times what they're supposed to cost.
Yep.
We buy products for our military and they come in at costs that are so far above what they were supposed to be because we don't have people that know what they're doing. When we look at the budget is bad to a large extent because we have people that have no idea as to what to do and how to buy. The Trump International is way under budget and way ahead of schedule, and we should be able to do that for our country.
Well, we're well behind schedule.
He's a very smart guy. He's a very smart businessman, and you cannot take that away from him. All the things that he has taken advantage of. You guys remember that deal back in the 90s, I think it was. He avoided paying $50 million in taxes, and it was all legit. And that's what the system is. That's what they do. And he's able to have over 20,000 employees. I mean, how many of us can say that we have that many employees? All of us. I don't have one employee anymore. But, I mean, how many can say I got 100? How many can say I got 500? How many can say I got 1,000 employees? For all these people that are fighting for socialism, they don't understand what they're talking about. Now, I will get into a debate with J.D. Vance and Tampon Tim. But first, I want to show you a couple of clips that I have gotten in my X account, and I hope that you guys enjoy this. This is just part of continuing my celebration for our Patriot veterans. I think you guys will enjoy this if you didn't watch it already, okay? So let's see it. Here we go.
Mr. President, have you ever done an ooh-rah to a bunch of Marines?
Not the kind that I just heard. I just heard a level of professionalism with the way they did it that I don't think anybody can match it, to be honest. That's very impressive.
Mr. President, why don't you drop one? Mr. President, why don't you drop an ooh-rah real quick?
I will. Hoorah!
Yeah.
That's for you, veterans. That's for my lovely veterans. I got one more here. There's a couple more.
Mr. President, have you ever done an ooh-rah to a bunch of Marines?
No, that one, no. It's the
You're the best. Ladies and gentlemen, that's President 45 and 47 of the United States of America.
You've got to witness it a little bit on television, but it was something. And the veterans have taken such good care of us. What I think of with the veterans is, how do I take care of the veterans? And we've done a really good job. Doug Collins, as you know, is the secretary, and we have a tremendous approval rating. We do a couple of things. Number one, we allow veterans, if they have to wait online, we allow veterans to go see a doctor. We take care of the price. You know, the veterans before me had to wait online for, in some cases, not even believable, months. And they had something that could have been taken care of easily, and they ended up becoming terminally ill. And I took care of that. Then Biden came in, and he evaporated that, and I just put it back again. And that was choice, and we have a choice, and we also have accountability. We call it Veterans Choice and accountability. We had a lot of bad people at the VA, and you weren't able, because of the various unions and laws and everything else, you couldn't fire anybody. I got that taken care of in Congress, and we let go of 9,000 people and put 9,000 loving people. To me, it means taking care of the veterans, because they've taken.
That's right. Now, here's something you guys probably haven't watched. This is for my leftist friends. But before we actually play this video, Vic, let me tell you something. When you welcome a president into our country, anywhere in our country, you roll the red carpet out. Why not? It shows respect. If we wanted to create war with Russia, we would have done that already. I think it's okay. They rolled the red carpet for our president. Why do we have to be different? And besides, if there's something that you don't understand, and I will recommend to any of you people that don't know who President Trump is, I will recommend that you go watch his biography. There's 2 pieces of it, and I think you should go watch it, and that you can see where his family comes from. It's a very rough life, but at the end of the day, the leader that we have today, President Donald Trump, has gone through so many things with money and without money, but the man has grown and he's a quick learner. He is a winner. He fights to win. He doesn't fight to lose. I'll tell you that right now. And if he has gone to bankruptcies and done all these things and used all these loopholes that are in the system, it is all legit. Everybody can use them. And if they don't want anybody using those type of loopholes, believe me, they would have changed them already. But the reason why they don't change them is because they know that if they screw the rich people and make them go broke, none of you socialist people out there will ever, ever in your lifetime be able to make a successful company that will provide millions and billions of dollars in tax revenues for the American people. So there's that. Why don't you go find out who President Donald Trump is, and that way you can learn what it's like to be a real American businessman and a real patriot. This day in 1995, President Donald Trump, while he was a regular civilian, donated over $200,000 so that veterans can have their honorary march. Go ahead and beat that. Do that with socialism. See how that goes. As I said, go watch the biography, his documentary. His family didn't always have money. Maybe Trump came in with money, but that's not the legacy of the family, and the father is the one that taught him everything he knows.
Step back, folks. Give me some room. Right? Step back. Step back. Give me some room.
Super chat from Liberty. What you say? Maybe I missed it, but I haven't seen an executive order from Donald about giving full benefit to veteran nor any other previous presidents that I would. He had somebody in charge of that. Remember? That's what he was saying. He had somebody in charge of doing that for the veterans. But I think he did have an executive order. I don't want to make it up though. I don't want to make that up. I haven't looked into it myself, so I wouldn't know. Now I'm multi-streaming here, so I can't really put a comment on that, brother. Sorry about that. Let's see. You're watching the white version of it, right? Hey Heath, how are you? Good evening. I got two streams going on, guys. That's why I can't see all the chats in there. So I apologize about that. Hey, Manuel, one more month, 1 month and a half, and then you can talk, okay? Not right now. You don't know what's happening yet. Month and a half, we'll see what comes up. The reason why Republicans are not worried about it is because they have a plan that they've been working on, just like they work on the big, beautiful bill 10 months before President Trump got in office. They are working on something else to work out for the people for 2026. The only thing is that they don't want to say anything to Democrats because everything Democrats touch turns into shit. And like the President Donald Trump's father says, everything Donald touches turns into gold. So I am not worried about 2026. I'm not worried about health care benefits. I'm not worried about my veterans. And besides, we have to do our own part as well to help them out. You cannot be a socialist, ungrateful American in this country and think that the government is going to do everything for you. Some things we got to do ourselves so that we can show that we are worthy of being in this great nation. What a great man. That is awesome. That is awesome. Now, for those of you guys who know a lot about President Donald Trump, why don't you tell me something that he has done? Tell me something that President Donald Trump has actually done. Because you guys seem to know so much about him. And I'd just be surprised if you actually don't know anything about him that is good. Everything you know about him is bad, right? You find all the dirt, all the bad scoop, anything to hate this man. Now, I know that he's done a lot of great things. What I want you to do is give me something that he's done horribly bad and one thing that he's done very good. And then you can keep talking freely. Fortunately for the great state of Texas, their former speaker, who is no longer speaker, Dave Fallon, is quitting politics. He was the one responsible for killing every bill having to do with voter integrity and school choice. Good luck in your next life, Dade. Oh, man, President Trump doesn't have hairs on his tongue. All right, let's see. Let's go ahead and scroll this baby down. President Trump says today on a tweet on X or Truth Social, I am proud to announce that Chicago, Illinois, despite all of the radical opposition and obstruction we have from the mayor and the governor, has seen car theft, shootings, robberies, violent crime, and everything else drop dramatically. Since the launch of the DHS operation Midway Blitz in Chicago only weeks ago, shootings are down 35%. Robberies are down 41%, and carjackings are down almost 50%. And this is with just a small initial federal force, not the full surge we have done in Chicago and Memphis. As we ramp up more assets, these numbers will continue to drop. This has been achieved despite the extraordinary resistance from Chicago and Illinois' radical Democrat leadership and the constant violent left-wing terrorists against ICE officers and federal agents that insurrectionist Democrat officials refuse to stop or prosecute, including constant physical assault and attempted assassination. That's how he fights. This is what he does. I have already suggested that he does pardon Maxwell. And we need to get all the scoop that we get from her. I think that if anything that she has to say does not give us a conviction of anybody, I don't think she should get the pardon. But then again, I am not the president. And if the president finds it fit to pardon her, that is his power. It is what it is, my friend, whether you like it or not. And I will support it. I don't have to like it, but that is his power. Okay? So there's that. All right, let me go ahead and put my X account to the side. And I got more for you guys to watch. I hope I didn't close it while I was talking to you guys. All right, here we go. All right, let's take a look at some of the comments here. I got split comments because I'm doing the streaming on here. Let's take a look. What do we got? Happy Max says, good evening. Got people just saying hello. Berniel, good evening, Patriots, he says. Berniel is in the house in one of my streams. Took me a while to find them in there. Yeah, thank you for the subscribe. Appreciate that. You are all amazing, and I appreciate you. All right. Let me see. Oh, man, how do we go in here? Yeah, let me switch this one here. All right, there we go. All right, let's go ahead and take a peek at the vice president debate. The vice president debate. We need to revisit this. If you guys are enjoying that, give the video a like. If not, thank you for visiting. All right, this is going to be Tampon Tim versus J.D. Vance. And, of course, he is already the vice president elect for President Donald Trump. So he's already on his side.
Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago, a nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together, understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit, because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me, and she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane, because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today, actually, a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then, of course, afterwards, to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job, and I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America, because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane. And my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together to all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover. But we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio. But there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the attorney general of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules. And it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary. But the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our border czar, Kamala Harris, has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, But Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn now to the economy. Thank you,
Margaret. The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
No, that's a gross generalization.
that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on health care then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in
he got caught.
Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Horrible.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate Donald Trump unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says. But look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women. We trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making child care more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that, too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their health care decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget, Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
Vice President J.D. Vance just ate Tampon Tim alive. He has no winning on this one, obviously. But when it comes to abortion, you have to look at a bunch of different things, and one of them is, yes, women have the right to their bodies and everything, but they don't have the right to the creature inside their body, and I'm against abortion 100%. Thanks for Trinity to convince me at that 99.99%. She has made it 100%, and I agree with her. And I will follow Vice President J.D. Vance's stance on abortion, and that's exactly what I'm going to support going forth, my friend. You know what? I believe that a lot of women out there, are just abusing their body, number one, which is okay. That's their thing. But to keep getting pregnant and to keep making babies just to kill them, there's got to be some type of dark evil behind it. And if you don't see that, I can't help you. I will agree if a woman wants to do an abortion, only if it was a cause of raping, not even raping, or the child has developed a human challenge, not even that for itself, but it was for a dumb girl that was a one-night stand. No. I think that the problem with that is that you still give people an excuse, and anybody can just say, oh, I was raped, and it could be lie. Oh, there's a defect. Well, somebody else can take care of that baby, or let God deal with that. We're not gods, and we should deal with it ourselves, okay? That's how I feel about it. That's what I have made up my mind to believe, and I am 100% against abortion from now on. With that being said, I will celebrate by giving you this, my friend. You won't be able to see it, but let me see. Maybe you will. We'll see. This is for a Liberty for All becoming the big boss.
be here, kid.
Trough of the movie.
Welcome back to the CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartels. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that worked. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said, actually, about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly, weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns, and there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the Vice President is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, one of the, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back, and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising? And what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods, too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But, Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
Yep. What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local. Many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. Look, it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and health care costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do. But I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better health care policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher. And he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens is... So you think the individual mandate's a good idea? You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret?
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret?
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it, Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of child care model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with child care. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide child care in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote child care because, look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, child care options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the child care shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with child care and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy's growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by 2 lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance, I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to
Please.
respond to you.
Yeah, well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So, America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
News vice presidential debate. It is now time for the closing statement. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country, and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage. And then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that, too, has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you.
I'm going to say, very nice. Hey, thank you guys for watching the videos here with us today, keeping us company. God bless every single one of you guys. I got to say that this is a very nice debate. I think J.D. Vance was one of the reasons why President Donald Trump won. I think he makes a lot of sense. He's very cool-headed, and I think that he is going to be the next great president of this nation. He is learning a lot from our president, Donald Trump. And as you can see, he speaks facts, he speaks the truth, but yet he is also very respectful. And I admire him for that. I think that's pretty an amazing quality that is not easy to find in many people nowadays. So that was very fantastic, man. I really enjoyed that debate. And I will say I'm surprised. You guys in the comments are also amazing. That the way that you guys are chatting on there, there's some legit issues that we have to address. But nonetheless, if it's they're legit. That's what we're supposed to be talking about. And if you learn anything from this debate is that there's going to be people that believe that what they have is the truth, and there's going to be people that believe that they also know the truth. And the fact of the matter is that there is a lot of conflicts in our country because we have a lot of differences in religions. We have a lot of differences of opinions. We do have a lot of mental health problems in our country. And I think that a lot of times, I can say maybe I have mental health problems as well because, we are meant to be, as I watch J.D. Vance here, our vice president, as I watch him, he's a better man than I am, and when I see somebody that has the intellect and the intellectual qualities that J.D. Vance has and has the strength to do what needs to be done, but also the patience to be able to take criticism and accept the things that he cannot control. He's actually got close to my heart on that. I'll tell you that right now. So I appreciate our Vice President J.D. Vance. I know some of you guys are having conflicts with certain subjects. I know one of the big ones here and one of the streams was abortion. Abortion is always going to be a very, very tricky subject because, of course, there's going to be people. You have to remember this when it turns out to be anything between life and death, anything between good and evil. There's always going to be a moral ground that we have to approach together. All of us, as as Americans coming together. We have issues with illegal immigration. Some people want to get in the way to obstruct the federal agents from doing their job. Other people, they want everybody to become legal. Everybody has good intentions, but at the end of the day, there is a reason why we select our leaders. And right now, our leaders are doing exactly what we voted them in. And so, if you voted for a leader that allowed millions of people to come here illegally, you cannot oppose the leader that is now in power, who is going to have to clean up all that illegal immigration, the invasion that came to this country. You have to understand, it's not just good people that come through. I actually had a couple of comments back and forth in one of the chats here from Manuel. Manuel gives me a hard time when he comes into my chat, pisses me off all the time. But, you know, he actually learned how to say something that will get my attention. And he finally got to hear an answer from me, from the heart. And that is that we need to get our legal Latino brothers and sisters that are in this country. And of course, we need to make sure everybody that is illegal is deported. I know that there's a lot of people that should stay, but we want to come together and we want to do things the right way. We want to make sure that we bring back those loved ones, but they have to come back the right way. If you have not told people to self-deport, I know you might think that's racist. I know you might think that might be a problem, but I'm going to tell you, if you have not told them to self-deport, you are ruining their chances from being able to come back to the States legally. And the other thing is, if you haven't been telling people that they can self-deport, they're going to miss out on the chance of being able to get a plane ticket or a bus ride back to their country, depending on what city, what state, and the distance, etc. You guys know, because of the government shutdown, well, you know, there's some things changing there. But you should encourage them to self-deport, because if they don't, two things happen. One of them, they will never be able to come back over here. And the second one is, if they are trying to self-deport without using the app, and do it through the government site, they're not going to get the benefit of getting a ticket to go down and get $1,000 once they get there. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we need to make sure that we keep an eye on that, and that we also share that information. Jay Vance is not a Christian. He is a Catholic, which I don't agree, says Liberty for All. And we've spoken about this, and it just popped in my chat. So Catholics, it is a denomination of Christianity. The Roman Catholic Church was the first church to be established by Peter, which at the death of Peter, the next person became a pope. And we're not going to get into that. God is going to be the one judging every single one of us when the time comes. Adam says self-deport is not racist. There are illegals from all races. Look at what has come through the southern border, not just Hispanics, from like 90 different countries. And that is true. We've seen a lot of Chinese. We've seen a lot of Middle Easterns. I mean, we've seen people not just from Mexico. Well, I mean, Hispanics, there's many countries, right, in our Americas. But I think that what we should really focus on is trying to tell them that it's not worth it to wait for ICE to come in and arrest them, or to even go protesting against federal agents and ICE, because they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I really wish that sanctuary cities would be a little bit more cooperative with federal agents, because they have allowed to have all these illegal, like hardcore criminals on the street. Well, other illegal people that could have maybe made a choice to self-deport, or maybe they just needed extra time to save a little bit of more money and then go, they will be deported. You know, you hear of the moms and the pops being arrested. You see the grandpa being arrested. You see the moms. You see all kinds of people being thrown to the ground. When you resist arrest, they will throw you to the ground. And it doesn't matter how big or small you are. You're resisting arrest, they're going to have to use force. And then, you just got to make sure that we follow the law. And if you love your Hispanic neighbors, if you know that they're illegal, give them the advice that they can self-deport. Let them know that there is a benefit to that. And if it's somebody that you feel that you can help out, well, get their information, get their, get all that you can about them, and then help them out in a different way. One of the things that you Americans can do is you can try to sponsor some of these people. If they self-deport and you keep all the information that they have, you will be allowed to write a letter for them and say, hey, I would like Pedro and Maria to come here to the States. You can stay here in my house. I will take care of them. We want them to have permits to work. They want to apply for a green card. You got to say all this information off the get-go. From the beginning, you do not want to lie whenever you are applying for any domicile. What's the word in English? Domicilio, for asylum, to be in here. You want to make sure that you're truthful. Being poor is not a reason to seek asylum, okay? So that's not going to go. Very random. If there's people that are afraid for their lives, somebody's threatened them, they got to have proof that somebody is threatening them. And if you are from Honduras, from Guatemala, or Belize, or any of those countries below Mexico, you cannot go past Mexico. The only people that can seek asylum technically into our country will probably be Cuba because of the ocean, Mexicans, and also Canadians. And that's it. Liberty for All says Catholics are not Christians. Even if they declare they aren't, if they want to be Christians, they better follow my Lord's God laws. Well, the thing is, nobody is perfect. I will tell you this. If I was to judge the Catholics, the only thing that I would judge them on, it's the idols, all the saints that they have, all the rocks, the Christ on the cross. He's not on the cross. He's gone. He's not there anymore. And so that's why if you see my cross here, there is no Christ on it. But, Catholics are very symbolical. They like to have their symbolic crosses and, the Virgin Mary. Why is the Virgin Mary not a Virgin Mary? Well, because after Jesus was born, Joseph knew her, and they had other children. So she is definitely not the Virgin. St. Anthony, St. Paul, all the apostles, right, that have been made into martyrs. One of the things that God did when Moses used Moses to deliver the people of Israel is he buried himself because he didn't want his people to make a shrine of Moses and worship him. You have to understand, God is a very jealous God. And yes, he loves us, and that's why he gave us his son, Jesus Christ, to come and die on the cross for us. But that doesn't mean that we can just say, okay, I'm safe, now I can do everything I want. No, you have to try not to. You have to be honest with yourself. How many times have we seen people that they go and commit all these crimes, and then on Sunday, Father, forgive me for I've sinned. I've done this, and that. And then they come out of the confession booth, with some prayers that they got to recite, and they think that's it. No, nobody can forgive your sins but Jesus Christ, but God. Nobody can forgive your sins. The priest cannot forgive your sins. See, I can forgive something you do against me. If you sin against me, if you trespass against me, I can forgive you, right? I can forgive you. But if you sin against God, if you trespass against God, then he needs to forgive you. But man on earth, remember the Bible says, don't call nobody on this earth Father. And what is talking about is the Father. You don't pray to Daddy. You don't pray to me. You don't pray to nobody else except the Father. And that's why you can call somebody a pastor, a bishop, and obis, or whatever you want to call them. But you should never call them Father. There's only one Father when it comes to spirituality, and that is that's Father God. from the Holy Trinity. Now, I know you will hear some of the apostles, like especially Paul, because he was very loving after he converted to Christianism. He called the people that he preached to that came to know Christ, he called them my children, my little children. And I think that's more of a, not that he's the father spiritually, but more of like, like for me in Spanish, okay? Now, if you're Hispanic in here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I can go tell a kid, mijo, come here, son, come here, right? Well, in English, it's the same thing. You guys call children son, right? Come here, kid, come here, son, something like that. But father, only the Father in heaven can be called father. But Catholics, yes, they are Christians. Who are also Christians? Let's remember that the Catholics are the first church. Who are Christians? Pentecostals, Methodists, Adventists, Triangular, Reformed, Evangelical, Prophetic, Apostolic. There's a lot of denominations. Lutheran. I don't believe on religion. That's why when people say, oh, well, Christ said this, I'm not that type of Christian. That's just the way it is. That's all I got to tell people. I'm not that type of Christian. God is God, and he doesn't share his throne with no one, and his rules are laws. Amen. And that is true. That is very true. And so, like I said, that's what I have against Catholics. They're idols, and that they're called the priest father. The Pope, that's the Antichrist. If the Pope believes that he is the communication between man and the Father, that is a blasphemy. And as I said, I don't want to judge other people's religions because of this one reason. There's only one reason why I don't do it. And that is because when Jesus was preaching in front of the priests, in front of the rabbis, Jesus talked to the crowd and he said, do as they say when they read the law or the word of God for us. But don't do as they do, for they don't practice what they preach. And that's what I remember. And so I don't judge them. I will tell you this. The Bible says that we are supposed to be reverent, and we are supposed to come in and gather together and worship. And I'm going to tell you something. When I go into a Catholic church, I don't feel like I am in an evil place. As a matter of fact, I like the choir singing. Oh, I like that. I like the a cappella. I love, it sounds angelical to me for some reason. And I like the reverence, everybody's reverence to God. I worship God. If people worship man, that's on them. But that's not what I do. Nonetheless, if I see that, like for example, if I see that the pastor is gay, I'm not in that church. I draw the line. I think that no man or woman will be perfect, but to recognize sexual immorality isn't okay to do. I don't stand by that. Now, you guys heard me before. I like Dave Rubin, right? Well, he's gay, and he's also Christian. And, well, you're Christian, you know the Bible, or you just think that you are a Christian, but that's Jesus. That's God that's going to judge us, all of us, in one place. So until we get there, we need to make sure that we get along. This is why you're going to see a lot of leaders that they gather Muslims and Buddhists and all kinds of different religions. And it's a very thin line to walk on, because a lot of paths lead to death, and they're wide, they're easy to follow, but the path to life, true life and salvation is very narrow, and you have to keep your eyes on Jesus, otherwise you fall. Do I go to a Catholic church? No. But one thing that you guys may have known from me on my previous lives, I used to do photography. Now, when I did photography, I would go into different kinds of churches. And, I photograph inside a Pentecostal church, a Baptist church. I photograph in big Catholic churches, big cathedrals, and I love doing it. I'm just two people joining in love, and they're being married under God and the witnesses, and I didn't find anything wrong with it. I photograph gay people. Hey, listen, I don't practice what they do. I still love the people. I don't love their sin, but I still love the people. I'm not going to stop doing business because I want to be hateful towards one's way of being. I never photographed the kissing because that grosses me out. That's just me. I'm sorry. It just grosses me out, so I can't. Let me see. What do we got here? Dave Rubin is Jewish. Oh, thank you, Adam. Okay, now that makes sense. Okay. Thank you for that. I thought he was Christian because he defends Christians. That's why I said that. I apologize. Thank you, Adam. Or maybe he converted. You're right. Russ Babe says, left in 1998 after college. Says Robert. Oh, you guys are having a conversation. All right. Does anybody have a question? What did you guys think about the debate? I know that, is one of those things to where, like, it's in the past, but we see what has happened so far. I will tell you guys this. If you guys haven't seen the Donald Trump's biography, I recommend that you do that. I really do. You're missing out on a lot of information for Manuel, especially Manuel. So they talk about his life. They talk about Fred. Fred's dad. Fred is the father of President Trump, and then his father was Friedrich. I think it was his name. German, I believe, I think. I don't know. I just know that there was a grandpa there, and he made some things, made some lies, made some business. Oh, let's see. Okay, I get you. That's what I used to do, so I can learn about other beliefs. Yep. Hey, Liberty for All. Thank you for your love and support today, man. I like that you were able to put those super chats on there. That helps a lot. And let me go ahead. After I tell this story, we're going to go ahead and let our president dance for us and celebrate that you are still the boss. He acquired some land, built hotels. He couldn't do some of the things that other people were doing for wealth, but he was very smart, very clever, and he was a good businessman. There was a lot of immorality things back then, and then later in the future, Trump's dad was born, and of course, he came out, was raised by the grandpa and the grandma, and there was a disease going on in the early 1900s, and that's what killed Trump's grandpa, and then Fred Trump, which obviously is Donald Trump's dad. They talk about Trump's, older brother, and his struggle with alcoholism. It talks about Trump describes himself as this really rebellious young teenager. He always getting almost expelled from school, and he was just didn't like to be told what to do, etc. And he was bad, and his father didn't know what to do with him, so he put him in military school. He graduated top of his class. I believe he became an officer, and that's where he supports the military. Now, I saw a lot of comments on the chat that he dodged the draft or whatever. Listen, not everybody is made to be a soldier on the field. Some people are meant to lead from the base, and I think that President Donald Trump was not meant to be a soldier, just like I wasn't meant to be a soldier. For whatever reason, they didn't want me in the army, but, I wasn't meant to be a soldier. But those who are meant to be soldiers, what we do is we respect them, we honor them, and we thank them because they are able to take the task that we were not able to do. And so my love and respect for them is even greater because I didn't make that sacrifice. But I know what it feels like to be away from family. I know what it feels like to have that loneliness. Even when you have 1,000 people around you, I know what it feels like to be lonely in front of thousands of people. I know that feeling. And so I appreciate the sacrifice that our veterans do, all the men that enlist in service, but I'm not going to put down people because they didn't serve. That doesn't make them any less of a hero. Not every hero has a rifle in their hands. A lot of heroes, they have medicines, they have bandages, and they have scalp knives, and they do different things to be heroes. We got teachers that are heroes. Right now is President Trump's turn to show us to be that hero that we need, and well, he's delivering. And we just witnessed a great man, J.D. Vance, which is going to be the perfect replacement for Donald Trump once he is done with the next 3 years of his term. And I would think that most people in the United States of America, including Democrats, will agree with me that J.D. Vance is a man of character, as he said it before, and he said it on this debate. He called President Trump names, and he accused him of this and that because of what legacy media has been saying about it, the stories that he'd been hearing. Oh, he was horrible. But then he realized once he met the man and got to know him that those things were false. And that's why he supported him, and that's why he accepted him as the president. And it shows, I see the respect that J.D. Vance has for President Trump. There's people already there's people already putting dirt on J.D. Vance with the wife and Erica and all this other nonsense. It's like, listen, whatever's going to happen with them is going to happen. The kids, they're special. I can tell that they have a lot of hard time with the kids. They're beautiful kids, but they have a hard time. And we got to give them respect. We got to give them support, and we got to give them space for sure. Guys, if you have been with me tonight, I want to appreciate you for that. But right now, it's Liberty for All's moment to shine. And President Trump, of course, is going to do the dance for us. So stay tuned. I got a little bit more information to give you guys. Here we go. Thanks for the super chat. About the past debate, I didn't agree with Vance when he said we need to take illegal houses and give it to the citizens. Well, I mean, that does make sense, my friend. How about if any of those illegals have some of their sons as soldiers? That part, I think so. When it comes to that, that's a good question, actually, and I like that. I'm sure there is a way to go about it, but if you are enlisting so that your parents can get papers, they will get deported. That's not how it works. Even if you are enlisting, remember, enlisting is a patriotic duty, right? If you're able to do it, it's voluntary, it's not a draft. It's not a mandatory draft. If the person going into the military, if they are illegal after they're done with their service, or even while they're in service, they will be deported, even though they're actually fighting for the country. Okay? If that son is a citizen, okay, or even if he's a resident, What he needs to do is make sure that he applies for a green card for the parents. You got to show that you're able to sustain them, like you can take care of them. And then when you do that, if they tell them that they have to, because there is a due process, if they tell them that they have to go back to their country, they need to do that. But the application will stay firm. And then once they are approved, then they can come into this country, okay? Let me see. Adam says, or kids who are citizens who live there. I don't know. I missed it. I missed it somewhere in here. Robert, probably not much DEI, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I don't know what you guys are talking about there. But there's reasons for it, my friend. Now, with that being said, I will point something out. I don't know if there is a way, but if there is a way, I will tell you right now. You will not be able to buy property in Washington State, because I'm not the president, I will never be a president. If you are not an American citizen, you will not be able to buy property in Washington State. And if you are leasing, that's different. You can lease, that's fine. But owning, if you are not a citizen, that property is going off your hands. Now, if somebody is renting a house, that's different. But if somebody's trying to purchase a house, they have to be at least a resident. Remember, resident is a full-time access that you can come in and out of the country because you reside here, but you're legal. You have you got a permit, etc. And then if you clean, if you never get caught doing something that you're not supposed to, and you apply for citizenship, then maybe that would do. Did you saw the father that got detained even when his 3 sons were Marines, 2 on service and 1 a veteran? Okay, here. Oh, he said that's a perfect one. So there's 2 in the service. Are they all citizens? Do you know? Because here's the thing. So the one that is veteran, I'm assuming he already has papers. He's a citizen, right? He finished. Once you finish your military duty and you're a resident, you get your citizenship. That, I think that is legit, and I believe that's what happens. You get your citizenship. He should have asked for his father and his mother, whoever, grandparents, whoever, to be allowed to be here. If they didn't do that in the process because they were probably afraid that he was going to get deported, even if he was going to get deported, they should have sent the father back to the country, take care of him from there, and then once he got papers to be here, then he can come back to the States and reside legally. It is a very hard thing to do, but that is the process, and everybody needs to follow it. I have my little bit of bias on, because if I believe that somebody's being here, before 2000, I think. That's just me, though. It doesn't have to happen. That's just me. Anybody that's been here since before 2000 that didn't come in with the wave of illegals, I think will probably get a chance to pay a fee and will be allowed to keep papers. But they got to really prove that they love the States. Let me see. Manuel says, Trinity, the ones in due process can't come back anymore. That is true. That is true. So if you have your due process, they will tell you, because they have translators, right? They will tell you that you have to leave the country. And if you don't leave the country voluntarily, I see this is where I think the problem lies. Imagine this. Whew. If, like right now, what you see in Chicago and all these blue sanctuary cities, okay? Number one, you already know the biggest problem is criminals in jail are not being deported because sanctuary cities are protecting them. So they go after everybody else that they can, okay? I'm not saying that's the perfect way to do it, but they have the right to do it. It is federal law being broken. The problem is the system is too damn slow. You know why it's too damn slow? Because Democrats don't want those people to get papers. They don't want to help those people because they lose their money. They make money. Now let me give you another side of it. A lot of paralegals, listen, not even lawyers, paralegals, they are making thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on illegal immigrants. And let me tell you what they do. Even if you are illegal in this country, right now, because of the invasion, it's going to be hard. That's why I'm saying self-deport. There is no, I'm going to hide it out and see what happens. It's too many came here illegally, okay? Millions and millions, unacceptable. So the alert, you know what I'm saying? The radar, the alert is red alert right now. It's way beyond. But what the paralegals will do is this. They will tell the illegal immigrants, right, because they don't speak English a lot of times. They go to a Spanish paralegal. The paralegal goes to the government's website. They have access to these forms. So they download the forms, put them in the computer. They do nothing. Nothing is special at all. Nothing. They just fill out the paperwork. Anybody that speaks and reads English can fill it out for free. For free. Paralegals charge $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, probably even more, depends on the people, right? And lawyers are even worse because just like they were doing in Mexico before they come here, these guys were charging money to give these illegals a paper with a seal from Mexico that doesn't mean shit here in the States, and sign it and say, with this paper, you'll be able to get through. And they will go right through there. And guess what? They did, because the border was open. These guys lied to illegal immigrants when they were doing the massive invasion in the Caribbean. They lied to them. All they had to do was tell them, go to the border, it's open. They lied to them and they told them that if they had this paper, that they would be allowed to come into the country. They're thieves, just the same way. Lawyers, even judges, they make money by having cases in court. That's what I've seen, and that's what I believe. So, you know, you have corrupted judges hiding illegal criminals. You know, the lawyers are supposed to tell the people, once you get your due process, I can guarantee you the due process is just, okay, why are you here? Well, I'm poor and I want asylum. Well, if they were honest with them, they would tell them, no, you can't seek asylum for that. You got to go home. That's where they get their due process. And this is why you see a lot of ICE agents in the courthouses, because they already have order of deportation. But these lawyers, these paralegals, are lying to them and telling them that they can stay here longer. And instead, they look like hardcore criminals. And that's the problem. So it's not just, there's one problem. No, there's many factors that are causing this big problem in our country. And, if you're not a migrant, if you don't know how the process works, if you haven't been denied, if you haven't gone through this and that, you see, it's kind of crazy how God allows me to go through all this stuff. Let me see. Super chat here, another 5. Thank you, Liberty. If you ever become governor, I will hold you accountable to make our men on uniform to give them a reason to serve and honor their families. Amen. That's right. And I will. And that is something that I will fight for. But we need to let the information go out there first. I will hold people accountable for lying to migrants that don't have papers to stay here in this country. If somebody is hoping to serve in this country, it cannot be because they want papers for their parents. That's not a reason to serve, okay? That's not a sacrifice for the country. That's a sacrifice for the parents. And so I don't think that will be the same thing. But if the kids are legal, I mean, we haven't changed the laws on that. If the kids are legal and they go into service, that will probably be one of those things that we should process. Just say, hey, listen, we got these 3 guys, okay? The scary part is going to be, are they really going to tell me the parents are illegal? Are they going to trust me that, we're going to try to figure something out? And remember, it's federal law, state law, and federal law overrides state law. The blue city governors, they don't believe that. That they think they're presidents of the state, and just because the name is commander in chief, I get it, but that's not how it works. Like for example, here on the Constitution from Washington State, let me see if I can find it really quick, and I'm going to read. Well, I think I read it with you guys the other day, but there was one part in here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Let's see, like the habeas corpus, right? For us, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless in a case of rebellion or invasion, the public safety requires it. So it is mandatory by the Constitution that all illegal immigrants get deported, okay? But that's not the one that I want to read to you. I want to read something else. Let me see. Okay, here, this one. No person shall be disturbed in his private affairs or his home invaded without authority of law. Now, when they use this, the Section 7 of the Constitution of Washington State, a blue state for now, they are saying that they are the law. But illegal immigrants are not breaking state law. They're breaking federal law. And so the closure here is without authority of law. So if the federal government has authority over migration, they have the right to come into people's houses and take illegals out. And that's just the way I interpret it. I could be wrong, right? We need some lawyers and a good team to go through it. This is why we have to have a very good attorney general, not to sue the competition, not to sue other politicians, but to sue those who don't want to follow the law. And that's how I see it. I will tell you guys this. I am no expert in all the law, okay? I am not an expert on all economics. I am not an expert on all budgeting. I am not an expert on all taxes. I know the basics of everything, and that's it. So I will definitely use all the tools, all the resources, all the personnel that we have at our disposal. It's going to look weird. I know it doesn't matter what we do. People are always going to be against us. Some will like us, some will hate us. That's just the way it is all the time. But one of the things that we're going to do, it's number one, gain the trust of the people will be the hardest thing, I think, because Washington State has been screwed over so many times by their governors and senators and mayors and all these other people in office that they're supposed to be serving to protect the people, but they don't. They have different agendas, and the problem is that a lot of the people that are getting into office, they are migrants, and they think that they have to be a certain way because they're migrants. They think that they're supposed to prioritize migrants, and no, that's not how it goes. You were a migrant, but now you're supposed to be an American citizen, and you're supposed to still look out for the benefit of the American people. That should never change. That priority should be always number one. I'm going to show you something really quick. I got an old clip from the Washington State House of Representatives. Watch this.
Good morning. Welcome to House Finance. Today is Thursday, April 3rd. We're going to start with some bill hearings. Let's begin with HB 20.
Now, I'm not going to make you listen to it, but I want you to pay attention to this part right here because, number one, man, I understand, you know, I don't like DEI. I don't hire by DEI. I don't go by that. People need to know what they're doing. If I hire with DEI, I'm going to fail. I need to test people. Okay, you're an economist? Here, what happens if I do this, this, and that? And if I don't like their answer, they're fired. Look how many empty seats are on here. Normally, this is supposed to be filled up. Do you know why those empty seats are there? Because the people didn't think that it was important enough to come to the Capitol in Olympia, here in Washington State, to come and talk about the bills that are going to raise taxes on businesses and people here in Washington State. Let me see. Liberty, thanks for the chat. When I was illegal, all right, we have to deport this guy now. I disciplined my nephews to serve, not to a president or politician party, but to defend their country and stand for the laws. That's good. I like it. So these people are here. You know, you can see half of the people showed up for work. Now, I'm not going to make you listen to it, but I will fast forward here a little bit. This lady is they're just getting paid to say nothing. This is Joe Fitzgibbon, Democrat, which, of course, you've probably seen him. He's a representative.
The B&O tax on 370 highest grossing businesses in Washington State in order to help us meet our obligations to the people of the state. We know that these businesses benefit from us having quality public schools, colleges and universities, a social safety net, nursing homes for the elderly, public safety, transportation. None of those businesses would be able to succeed in Washington if we did not have all of those things, particularly a well-educated workforce.
Which they're not. We are horrible. Our children are getting stupider by the day that they go to school. But that's not the point of this. I want to show you one specific person. Some of them, by the way, this is like a 3.5 hour long thing, okay? But some of them actually, most of them were working from home. Let me see. You guys may recognize this guy.
Please proceed.
Hi, I'm Eli Taylor Goss, Executive Director of the Washington State Budget and Policy Center in support of HB 2045. Thriving businesses depend on thriving communities. And right now, too many Washingtonians are living on the edge.
Let's see. Protect us, not the billionaires. Obviously, that's one of the trannies working in office. And she works for socialists. Or he. I can't tell if it's a she or he yet, but I'm going to say is that she, because she's trying to look like a man.
In a time of uncertainty, well-funded public services to stabilize families and schools is what's needed. Any dollar not raised in progressive revenue is a direct cut to programs and parents. This bill offers a simple solution.
One thing that you have to understand, and I don't like this, when they do this kind of hearings, did you hear the answer of what she just said? It's going to cut programs, but they don't want to name them out in public. They expect people to read them, and nobody reads them.
What's needed. Any dollar not raised in progressive revenue is a direct cut to programs and parents.
Yeah, so it's a cut to direct programs. We need accountability for this program. These are NGOs that these people waste money on, and it's not benefiting anything here in Washington State at all. So this is, I watched all this stuff, and I listened to what they say, and they are just, everything is business and occupation tax. On top of that, you already know that they are taxing the people from their paychecks. They're taxing them by quarterly earnings. They tax per city, per county. They raise the tax bracket, obviously, according to what they make gross. But the problem with that is that when you're taxing gross, they don't take into consideration all the expenditures that they have to do in order for that business to stay business afloat. And I hear way too many stories about businesses just barely getting paycheck to paycheck. How does that work? When you're a business owner, you should be, set to be successful. You should be set to guarantee that you're going to have employment for however many employees you have under you, working for you. So there's a lot of things, guys, and I can't do all this. You saw how many people were missing in there. Why do you think that our budget here in Washington State is shit? Half of the people don't show up for work. They get paid. They stay at home. It's salaries. They don't have to punch in a card. How about they punch in a card and see, make sure that they put 40 hours physically, 40 hours a week, at least 40 hours a week. If they make more, that's fantastic. That's phenomenal. But there is no accountability. There's no accountability. The people just know, oh, we're just going to pay another 5 cents in taxes. Oh, we're just going to have another 35 cents in taxes. And they don't realize that this 35 cents on taxes is going to be every single time they have to make a purchase. So there's that, okay? That's what I think. And there's a lot of work, guys. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to happen in the first year. I will be surprised if it happens in the first 2 years. I will tell you that when it comes to capital punishment, there is going to be no strikes. If you commit the crime, I don't know, maybe 1 strike. If you commit the crime, depending on the crime and if there is any evidence, you do not get to walk free. You will do the time. And criminals will be made an example of. If you break the law, this is what happens. So do yourself a favor. Don't break the law. Right? And again, we talked about it earlier. Property taxes. They got to disappear. They got to disappear. I think sometimes the government can do things to fix numbers. And I think it's wrong. You know, like the value of houses. You know, if you have high taxes on property, you bought a house for $500,000 and now they value your house at $2 million. You got to pay property taxes on that $2 million, not on the $500,000, on the $2 million. And there's houses that are worth even more than that over here. A lot of houses. So I think that we would like to allow people to keep more of their money, allow them to make business with real estate. That's a good business. But we need housing available. And we got millions of people that came in all at once, and we just can't take it. Too many regulations, too many taxes, too many permits that are being denied for this and that. We need to push forward. One of the things that President Trump got pissed off at California, Gavin Newsom as a governor and their useless mayor in their California, is the lack of urgency to protect their citizens, to make sure that they take care of their state. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of people. But I'm going to tell you the kind of boss that I am, the kind of leader that I am. I will ride everybody hard. And unless I'm sleeping, there is no rest for you either. If I am up, you are up. And if I'm working, you are working. And if I'm being productive, you are being productive. I can tell you right now, and my wife can be witness, that when I work, I work. And not everybody can hang with me. And that I get from my mother. So I'm very proud to say that. The more things that I have in my head to take care of, the less I rest. The more I work. Because that's the only way that I can feel productive. Now, I will tell you this. When I take my vacation, I don't want to hear shit from nobody. Where is the governor? Nah, I'm on vacation. Don't call me. Don't tell me anything. There's a lieutenant governor that can take care of all this stuff while I'm not here. If they don't follow my policy, there's going to be some havoc when I come back. As simple as that. I think everybody deserves a nice vacation, and hopefully I get a good one if I do run. But let me see. But I will, I will probably not even have a vacation, to be honest, with all the work that we got to do. But Liberty says, yesterday I was hearing your comments about taxes on the rich. So somehow it did make sense. Which part? Which part made sense about taxing tax cuts for the rich? I just think, this is why I said I think on this. I think in the same way that President Trump thinks. I believe that if the rich can continue to grow their wealth and continue to provide jobs, they should have a break. They should have a cut. And just think about this. Why would we expect just one guy that's making a lot of money to pay a lot of taxes? Why not divide that burden amongst a lot of employees that will pay a little bit of that tax just think about this. I can pay taxes on my wealth for, I don't know, let's say I'm paying, I don't know, $1 million in taxes, right? With no employees. Well, how about if I have 1,000 employees? No, how about if I have 100,000 employees and then they each pay their due? You will probably have more than $1 billion in taxes. I think the math is obviously it's not all there, but I think that actually works. And you keep the rich people happy, and then you keep the hardworking Americans happy. Now, of course, there's other things, right? We're not going to be able to talk about that every single time, but I think that one of the biggest reasons why people don't want to go to work and stay on welfare is because the bar is set too low for financial aid. They want you to almost not be able to work. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. If you can get $1,250 worth of benefits, free health care, that's like $2,000 right there. Why would I go to work? Why would I have to pay taxes? There's no incentive. I mean, I can get an extra $400 a month. That's not an incentive. It's not good enough. So a lot of people don't work because of that. But I will say this. There will be a limit on welfare, no more than 4 kids. And I think that businesses need to get a lot of breaks. They will still be inspected, obviously. All that stuff still happens, but there's going to be a lot of deregulating to do because regulations are just taxes that they impose on them, and I think it's bullshit. As long as their business is clean, they're doing the right thing, everything is legal, that's what it is, right? So if anything, if they're being successful, maybe something else can be put on the side, but I don't think that, I think they need to give a break. As a businessman, I can tell you, you put more taxes on me and I will move my business somewhere else. Absolutely. Also, you're talking about the big corporations, right? Yeah. So, I can say I'm going to pay this many taxes or I'm taking my 1,000 jobs with me. Well, I got to make a decision. Well, where are you going to be at? Well, you're going to make some good money there. How about you pay a little bit more? How about this? Don't pay more taxes, but raise that minimum wage. Raise that wage, the hiring wage. I think we can make a deal with that. You see, the problem with people like governors and all these people, right? They don't think about the poor. And we've mentioned this before. They don't think about the poor, and so they never make the right choice. When I was a leasing agent, I used to go downtown Seattle, okay, towards the south area where it's not so nice. 1-bedroom apartment was going for $3,700. And it was not like a huge 1-bedroom. It was a regular 1-bedroom apartment. $3,700. Well, you know why? Because the average wages in Seattle, because of, Microsoft and companies like that, the average pay is $75,000 per person. So, of course, if there's a couple, they're thinking that the couple is making $150,000 a year, which you can probably afford that. But if you have family with that, you no longer can afford it. Now, this is downtown pricing, so I get it, the big commercial buildings, etc. But the problem with that is that you have these big buildings, right, that are very expensive, and there's a lot of poor neighborhoods around it. There's a lot of poor people around it. And because they are in the same area, right, where these property taxes are being laid out, they are suffering because they're poor. They don't make the $75,000. It takes 2 people to just make $70,000 in these areas. So they have to get rid of some stuff. They got to get rid of some property taxes. Leasing, okay, I get it, that there is a business to be done there. But I think taxing the rich is not the right thing. Depends on what kind of company it is. How many jobs are you going to give me? How much money are those jobs going to provide for our families here in Washington State? You see, there's a lot of people that also, Adam says, the tax the rich is just a poor excuse for not being able to budget in your means. And that is a big problem as well, that people just like to spend their money and they don't budget. So there you go. If my account goes negative, I messed up. If my account goes negative, I messed up. I overspent. A lot of times I'm going to blame somebody else, but I'm going to keep it to myself, right? Because I'm trying to please. But it is my responsibility if that ever happens. And so I have to take it to heart. So there's a lot of things, my friends, that we can do, but there's so much to do. And well, let's be honest. Being a governor is not just what you see on the TV. That's not all they do. They got to keep track of all the money comes in. I was talking a little bit with Adam here through texting, and show me some good pointers. And I expect no less. I expect the job to be very strict because I am very strict when it comes to work. Excuse me. I will tell you this. If I can do the job, I expect you to do it if you're supposed to be an expert on it. I'm not going to tell you to do something that I couldn't do myself. So I expect people to work. If they work, they get praised. If they don't work and they're lazy, they're fired. We'll find somebody else to do the job. That's just the way it is. And again, one of the things that I want is transparency. So I am glad that DOJ is out here holding people accountable. These guys are running around like headless chickens right now. They don't know how to sue President Donald Trump right now because they are in trouble. They're in trouble. And they don't know where to go. So, man, can't believe it. 9 o'clock, guys, 9 o'clock. All right, we're going to call it for tonight. Guys, thank you so much. What you guys think about the feed? There's not much that I can do here when I do the multi-streaming. I don't like that maybe there's some comments going on one of the streams and I don't see it on here. I only see one stream doing chats. That's my fault. I got so caught up on giving you guys some answers. Let me see here. Let me read some comments on the vertical stream. Let's see. Let's see. Kevin, he's a true hero. Somebody looks up who Cleet County is. I will tell you the story. No. Jay says George Washington was from Washington State. That's correct. This is the original Washington State. Correct. Let's see. Knowles is lost. He don't know what the hell's going on. Moonwaver's class warfare boring, says Brian. Kevin says free markets, free trade, free markets, free people, free speech, free religion, etc. John, CEO, worker pay has gone from 2.6 times in 1970 to 206 times more in 2022. They need to pay people more and pay their taxes. The problem with raising wages too much is if it causes too much of a burden to a company, they can go broke and they can take their business somewhere else where labor is cheaper. This is why factories and manufacturers left us for China, for India. We're trying to avoid that. We need these people to stay here and keep those jobs active. I am against the union when it comes to so much negotiating for higher wages. All it does, it causes prices around to go higher. Higher wages doesn't mean that you're going to make more money. Higher wages means everything. Inflation, everything goes up. So higher wages is not really the answer. What the answer is trying to deregulate things and tax less and bring the prices down so that your dollar can actually be worth something. Super Chat Liberty says, at Manual, I'll be making deals around, but I must make some money so I can keep you working. But if I get high taxes, I will move somewhere else and you will be unemployed. That's how that works. I agree, and that's the thing that we have to take care of. We need to make sure that it's kind of like you have to look at it this way. I want a product. What is my product? As a governor, what is my product? What do I want? What do I need for my home, for my family, to have everything they want? My product is employed people. Why? Employed people will pay taxes, fair taxes, and those employed people are going to make money for corporations, for businesses. They might even branch off and have their own business. That's how that works. You see, and this is one of the things that you're going to find out from a lot of Hispanics. If we all come here and we get a job, let's say, for example, we get a job, we work for the man for painting houses, buildings, etc. We're going to learn everything that we can about painting. And then if I want to make more than $200 a day, well, then I'm going to start my own business. Okay, how much for equipment, how much for my own van, how much for the tools, and how much for that? Where do I get the deals for the paint? How much is the price of that? How much can I charge for this specific job? How many hours will it take if I have this many people? All right, let's do it. Boom. And then you go. And then you make more money. But what happens now? Well, now you have to buy insurance. Now you have to pay L&I. Now you have to pay unemployment insurance. Now you have to go and get benefits, right? If you're doing it legal, that's why it's hard to be a business owner. That's why there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are trying to teach you how to be your own business owner without having to have your own product. For example, insurance agents. You can be your own boss. You can make up to 6 figures every year. You can have other employees if you need them. There's a lot of people that become successful because they're very good at selling insurance. There is good people as salesmen. They make their bank. Others don't. Others get fired. Others get bored. They get tired. It's too hard. They can't do it. They can't pull their own weight. Man, there is so many things that you can do. So instead of bitching and complaining about, I need to make more money, you got to make a decision. Okay, so do I stick here? Let me see, what's my options here? So do I stay in this company that pays me $25 an hour? I'm not happy. I think I should make more. Okay, well, I go to the boss. Hey, I need a couple more dollars. I can't, this is not a livable wage anymore here. I need a couple more dollars. And the boss says, hey, I can't afford it. Right now we're investing. We're doing this. We're doing that. So now I got a choice. Okay, do I like my job? Am I going to be happy with just making $25 an hour? And I'm not going to get those 27 that I want. But there's another company. They will start me off at $19 an hour, but within 5 years, I can go cap at $45 an hour. That sounds very nice. It sounds very good. Here's the catch. That job sometimes makes you work 6 months straight, no days off. You make very good money, but no days off, and it's mandatory. The people that can put up with that type of demand get a lot of money. Liberty says that, Güero, I will not pay you the minimum. I will pay you what you're worth. But if I am getting repercussions, I can't, even if worth more. Absolutely. And that is the mentality of a business owner, my friend. You can't just demand more money. What you can do is go get another job. So do I want to sacrifice every single day of the week for 6 months, working mandatory overtime? I'm going to make bank. I'm going to make bank. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of workaholics, they do it. And it's not a problem. A lot of young men, they do it, and it's not a problem, but it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for everybody. And besides that, not only are you supposed to sacrifice yourself working 6 months straight with no days off, your shifts are 10 to 14 hours daily. So you got to think about that as well. And so you start balancing stuff like, oh, I can't do that. Okay, I'm just going to shut up about this raise. I'm not going to ask for a raise because I just can't do that on the job. Or you can hope to move up in the company, etc. But I feel, especially on the company that I worked on, okay, that's one of the companies that should get a tax cut. There should be a little bit of less regulation. They are spending so much money, right, with tariffs, right? We need those tariffs to make us money. I want to encourage this specific company just to give you an example. I want them to be able to make another building, get more equipment, hire more people, It's going to cost millions of dollars for this project to be completed, but they're going to be able to hire another 100, 200 people. Those people are going to pay taxes. Those people are going to spend the money here in the States. Will they send money and remittances to their families in other countries? Yeah, probably. Well, guess what? They can do that. It's because they're legal. As long as they're legal, I have no problem with it. So you see where I'm going with this? Like, there's so many things that you have to do that can work, but at the same time, it's like you can't tackle everything. So the only reason why I can think about all this stuff right now is because you're bringing it up. But if I'm just sitting there on the chair thinking, I probably won't be able to come up with anything except for maybe a couple of things that I really feel needs to be pushed. But everything else gets thrown in the back burner. And this is how you hold people accountable. Hey, remember, Dennis? You say you're going to do this? What happened? Oh, shoot. That's right. Get on it. And really get on it, right? So, that's where I'm at with that. Anybody has any other questions? I think I gave you a lot. A lot, okay? But I believe I am a good leader. I am a good boss. When I have my own business, I make sure that my employees actually had money. Even if I didn't make any money, I always make sure they got paid. So, yeah, there's that. Let me see. Anybody else here in the chat? Liberty for all. Thank you, my friend, for your support, for the super chats. I did promise you that I was going to play the big boss because nobody took you off. Once you got there, you stay there. So here we go. All right, taxing the big company is that why President Bukele haven't taxed the companies who want to bring business to his country? That's actually a very good question. Bukele, he's like Trump, but the Salvadorian version. Okay, he's like Trump. He's pro-business. He believes that corporations, big companies, provide a lot of jobs, should take breaks. They should have breaks. They should continue to make more money. The problem is jealousy. This is why it's one of the sins. Jealousy, envy. This is why it's bad to have that. Because you have to understand, even though you want to make $1 million a year, we understand that. But then you start thinking selfishly, and then you start thinking survival of the fittest, right? And if you can step over somebody else's family, you want to make more money. Well, if they can provide 1,000 jobs, that's fantastic. You know what would be a good business, and there's factories already down in Honduras, but what's a good business is you make clothing. Remember, President Trump says, we don't want to make that kind of business over here. We don't want to make clothing. We can make clothing, but we don't want to make clothing. We want to make chips. Want to make power, want electricity. We want to get all this other stuff that makes money, And I think that he is on the right path. I agree with him on that. But we have countries like Salvador, Honduras, even Mexico. You can build these big factories, of employees where they make clothing, T-shirts, underwear, socks, etc. There is companies like that in Honduras, and I will tell you right now, a supervisor at one of these manufacturers in Honduras, they make about $5,000 a month, and that's a lot of freaking money. Let me tell you right now. In Honduras, $5,000 a month if you're a supervisor at one of these companies. Now, what do the people pay? What do the people make over there? Let me see. I don't want to exaggerate, but they don't make much. I think it was 15,000 lempiras was the minimum. This is the minimum wage, or the average pay, and 15,000 is 26 to 1. So 15,000 would be like what? Half of that. Anybody do the math in there? 26 to 1. That's $26,000 dollars per se, but they're only making 15,000. Oh my gosh, I can't think. I can't think of the math right now. It's too late. My brain is fried. This is why I need people that know how to do accounting, and they better be good so they don't make me look bad. Oh man, but I think it's good. It's a good thing. But you know what I mean? There's ideas, right? If you want to make more money than what they're paying you, go make yourself your own business. Go find a way to make more money for you and your family. Liberty for all. I hope you join me tomorrow night. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Adam, for being here. Thank you, Trinity. You work your butt off going back between both of these. Do you guys like this better to have it this split? I almost don't, because I don't have both of the chats on the same screen. I have to look up at my laptop so I can see both of the chats, and it's difficult to miss all of those. That's the only reason why I can read Liberty chats, is because he's doing super chats. Okay, but we'll see. You guys can shoot me an email and give me some feedback. And that is all from me, my friends. I thank you so much for your time. You all be blessed. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.